I got shit to do. Gotta raise these onions, bitch.
You know who else has to raise onions?
Who?
Hey there, everybody.
Welcome back
to PixelLit.
That was the best one so far. That was the best one so far.
My name is Kevin. Alongside with me, as always, is Phil.
Hello.
And today we have a very special episode for y'all. We are talking to author William C. Dietz, the writer of Halo the Flood. He's going to be on the show talking to us two podcasters.
Two schmucks with microphones and
about how that book happened. And I think he answered some pretty interesting questions, don't you think?
He was a very informative, very knowledgeable, really stoked to be here. He was so generous with his time, and it was terrific to actually be able to put the person to the book that we talked about for 5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So it was good to put a face and a voice to the name and the words of the book. He confirmed some suspicions that we have had out loud, not just about this book, but previous books that we've read.
Yes.
Regarding involvement of others, let's just say,
yes,
in the writing process, in the adaptation process. So I think it's a fun conversation, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you next week. With what are we doing next week? Oh, we got Ninja Gaiden with our
next
good
week
friend.
We got Ninja Gaiden
with our good friend Aaron Hess from Oops All Monsters. So
hell yes.
So
this is gonna be a really good episode.
Yes. All right. Well, take care, everybody, and enjoy the interview.
Have fun.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on. This is
well,
this is really cool.
I think I kind of mentioned to Kevin, and that there's a thing in the writing community, has been for a long time, that work for hire, is not thought of highly in literary circles. It's it's scut work in the view of many, and but I disagree. I think that it's participation, typically in some kind of an effort that a whole bunch of people have already been involved in, and they've created something cool, and it's a lot of fun, and it's very creative to, add your little touch to it. Yeah. And I don't see that as being in some way, scut work.
No, it makes me think a little bit about, it makes me think of like pulp novels, where at the time it was, it's pulp. It was very,
right.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am style writing. But nowadays, the authors, H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, people like that are legends now.
That's right.
So it makes it's really in the eye of the beholder. It
is. I mean, the line between a Heinlein science fiction novel and the kind of thing you're talking about is very thin, and it's very easy to go across the line and go to pulp, but it's also easy to do something without knowing it that's really great.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's just get into it then.
Yeah.
We got some questions. Actually, I mean, based on what we're just talking about right now, maybe for our listeners, explain a little bit about the work for hire process, how that differs from just sitting down and writing a book.
Well, so a typical book, and that's what I do, is typical books, and I've written like more than 60 novels at this point. A typical book for a publishing company like, let's say, Penguin, who I worked for 30 years, is a deal where, you pitch an idea, and if they like it, they say, hey, that sounds pretty interesting. Give us some more depth on that. You do an outline, you do a treatment, you talk to your editor and so on. Eventually that turns into a contract, and you sign it and you get some money up front, and you go write the book, and then you turn it in, and hopefully it does well. And but everything in that book is determined. The content of the book is determined by you. The cover of the book, the way it's edited, the typography, all of that is determined by the publisher. Mm-hmm. Work for hire is different from that model, and that what you're doing is you are being hired, like you might hire a brick mason to build a wall. You're being hired to do a job, and that
you're building
job,
a wall of words.
Yeah,
perfect. Text.
Perfect, exactly. That's a really good simile. So, and because you're a workman or workwoman, as the case may be, the terms of the contract are basically do what we say and deliver a certain kind of product at a certain time for a certain price, and please be on time, and all of that, so that's one thing that makes it different is that they're telling you what to write. You're not, coming up with that on your own. They're basically, usually in early meetings, they're saying, okay, Bill, we brought you aboard to write this novel, and but here's what we have in mind, and then they pitch you with whatever it is, except it's not a pitch in the sense that I can say no.
Yeah, right.
It's a description, really, of how they want me to take their character, their universe, and all of that, and
right.
Work with it. So that makes it a lot different. And another thing that makes it different is that instead of working all by yourself and wherever you like to work, you're working in an environment. It may be virtual, but nonetheless, you're working in an environment where you're part of a team.
Right.
And so, let's take Halo the Flood as an example of that. So, the Bungie team at that time, had whatever number, let's just say 15 people. I don't know what it really was, but that's something in that area.
Yeah.
And these people had already, when I came on the scene, put out 2 games that were very successful. They had a subculture like you do at work, right?
Right.
And there's personalities, and there's people with talents, and there's people with flaws, and there's all of that. And, so you're walking into a team situation because we're all human beings, and there's a lot of nuance and a lot of stuff, and you're trying to learn very quickly, particularly if you get to meet face to face, which I did in the case of Halo the Flood, because Bungie was up here right outside Seattle, and I live in that area, so I could go see them directly. But you in that kind of a thing, though, you start to run into this not only a culture but a shared understanding of the project that you don't have. Mm-hmm. So you walk in the door and you say, "Hey, here I am, and boy, it's fun to be here, and I have 7 great ideas,"
Right.
And you roll those out. And I'm not dumping on Bungie here. I'm just using them as an example.
Yeah, of course.
They go, well, I don't like that first one. The Master Chief would never do that. And then, I don't like the second one. The Covenant doesn't work that way. And I don't like the third one, and
sure.
And so on. And and that's the deal. As work for hire, they are right, you are wrong, and you need to accept that. You have to come humbly to the situation.
That's really, Kevin and I both went to grad school together. We met in a TV writing class, and one of the things they told us when we were writing spec scripts is they said, if you have your heart set on a certain TV show that you want to write for, don't write an episode of their show, because they already have in mind everything, and they'll be able to pick every good idea you have apart. But another TV show might look at that and go, "Oh, this is a great episode. I ought to tell them about you," or something like that.
That's right on. I think that was good advice.
Did you have any preconceived ideas about the Halo universe that they just shot down beforehand, or did you kind of go into it fresh?
Well, yes and no. So can we back up for a second? Do you
Yeah,
want to talk
yeah,
about how
sure.
I even got involved? And then
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
Please.
Yeah, please go right ahead.
So at the time, that this all went down in 2002, I had, a reputation for writing military science fiction. And so that qualified me, I guess in their eyes. And, and so uh, I I got a call from my agent indicating that there was this possibility of this work, and it was this thing called Halo the Flood. And I said, I've never heard of it, and I never had. And he said, well, it's supposed to be a really cool property, and it's going to be really great. And but it's not, you're not writing a novel, you're writing a novelization. Well, I knew what that meant. And that's something too your listeners might be interested to kind of sort out for themselves, is this notion that a novel for hire is like you're inside a universe that somebody owns, but you're allowed to create something fresh, a novel from start to finish. But a novelization is taking the game, in this case Halo the Flood, and simply turning the game into a novel. And I'll come back to that in a minute. That's like considered by literary people to be even one step lower than, scum. That's like the scum that lives under the scum.
Right.
So that's not considered to be a real thing that you want to, advertise with your career typically, but I do.
Sure.
Anyway, so I got this thing, from my agent, and I said, well, I need to think about it, and particularly given that he already knew that the timeline was going to be basically 3 months. And, typically even I'm a pretty fast writer. That just is my nature. And I often write a book in half a year, but 3 months is really, really
That's a lot.
No joke.
That's
crazy. And so I went to the source of all knowledge where games are concerned, which is the GameStop in my neighborhood, right?
nice.
And I, go to the guy behind the counter who's got the long hair, the tattoos, and all the requisite stuff going. And I said, I've been asked to work on a project called Halo the Flood. And I said, is that game any good? He goes, oh, dude, that game is fabulous. We can't even keep copies here. I mean, it just flies off the shelf and people love it and everything, And I thought, okay, well, if the guy at GameStop loves it, then, it
people
must
like
be
it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the research I did there. Then I went back. I went back and I said that I would do it. And so now coming back to your original question, there were meetings off the top with the team to kind of establish what was what and what the tone was, what they were looking for, and all of that. And they were looking for a straight-on novelization of the game. And I said, I just cannot get completely there. I said, is there any opportunity for, me to inject new material in the cut scenes? You guys, have a background in television writing, so you know what a cut scene is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that, point where everything dips to black and, time passes and the computer technology that runs games, rewinds itself, so to speak, and gets ready for the next level of the game. And I said, right there at those points, it's a natural place where I could introduce characters that don't exist in the books, and and give a different perspective. Maybe take the point of view of some Covenant, characters and so on. None of which had been done up to that point. And I said, I really need that in order to do this project. Otherwise, it's just mind-numbing, craziness to just grind my way through and, say, and then he turned the corner and drew his pistol, and then he shot, all of that. So they, to their credit, I think they said, yeah, okay. Obviously, we want to approve what you do, and we don't want you can't kill off the chief and
Sure.
stuff like that. Obviously, but go for it and let's see how that turns out. And so I did, and it depends, so you can go online, look at the reviews, and some people say, look at the novel and, on Amazon and their reviews say, this is a piece of crap. It's just a retelling of the game. If you've played the
Right.
game, you don't need the book. But then other people do give me credit for having inserted the additional stuff. And
Yeah.
they clearly enjoyed it. And I would say that if you look at the Halo games now, some of the things that I put in there, like politics between the different alien species and
Mm-hmm.
each other, that the emphasis on Marines and that whole thing. Some of those things I think I can claim a little bit of credit for, and here I
Yeah.
am claiming it. So just
No, and and that's the thing. That's kind of actually where we landed as we were reading through the book and kind of recapping it episode by episode. We loved this. Basically, any scene that didn't have Master Chief in it, we were like, "This is great." and
thank
and
you.
and then when it got to Master Chief, he's like, "Well, this is just what you do in the game."
It's the
And
game.
it's and that's one of the things with that we found is that when you have a game, like the things that he does in the game are thrilling and interesting for game's sake, but when you're reading them, they become less so, only because it's like, well, there's no it almost feels like there's no stakes,
Right.
for him. But for all the other characters, you have McKay, you have even Yayap, who became our favorite character of all time.
We loved
My
Yaya.
favorite character too.
It was, we loved it. Every time we had a Yaya section, it was like, all right, we're back with Yaya. What's happening next? It's great. We loved it.
You can see that character. Yeah, have you guys played Halo Infinite?
No,
No.
Oh, okay.
no.
Well, when you play it, which I assume you will at some point,
Eventually, yeah.
you'll notice that all of those little grunts running around, they share a certain common characteristics with the original
Absolutely.
character, and then it works well to this day. And
Oh, that's amazing.
so at least that's my subjective opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you guys liked that. It was something that meant a lot to me.
Well, that really is the challenge, isn't it? When now to get the main plot line of the game, did you play through it yourself? Did you watch a playthrough? Or both? How did you go with that?
That's a really great question, Phil. So like I said, I'd never heard of it. So the first thing I had to do is buy an Xbox, and the second thing I had to do was to play through the game as you suggested, just to see if I could get through. How hard was it to get through?
Right.
So I started out like on normal, and which I was used to playing, and then I thought, no, this is stupid. What you want to do is go on easy so that you can just see the outlines of everything, pay more attention to the flow and so on than the
Right.
actual action. Do that first, and then play it on normal, and and ramp it up. So I did that, and then the really hard part came where having got the feel for it and understanding how it works and all of that, I had to go through, and actually write down, everything that happened. So, like play a little bit, stop and say, and then the Master Chief went up over the hill, and wow, then suddenly there was this construct there, and, there was a great blue light around it and a spaceship, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And
We actually had a specific moment that we talked about in the game where Master Chief is sniping people from a distance.
right.
He's sniping Covenant from a distance, and then he's lost track. He's got blinders on, basically, loses track of what's right around him, and basically gets jumped on by some jackals or something along those lines. And I said to Kevin, I said, That happened to me when I was playing the game. Do you suppose that happened to him when he was playing it?
Probably. But that's one of the interesting things. We all know this, of course, because we've played a lot of games. But
Yeah.
there's enough variation in what could happen to you in that game that that might have happened to you or might not.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's helpful. So the version that people saw of the game was the one that happened to me, but they probably experienced it slightly differently,
Right.
We found out. So, all right. So it was 3 months to turn around 85,000 words. Is that what the contract said?
That's what the contract called for. I sent you that little snippet.
Yeah.
Now,
that do you find that in other work for hire jobs similar to this one, maybe in the video games industry, that kind of follows around? That's about right as far as
it's about 85 to 90,000 is very typical. I wrote a Hitman novel, which was not a novelization. It was a novel.
Mm-hmm.
It was about that long. And for example,
but in 3 months.
No.
Okay.
No, I think I had 6 months or maybe even more to write that. And
right.
Yeah, but it was fun, and that had its own strange flavorings and everything too.
Oh yeah, Hitman's. We actually, in the process of looking you up, that was me finding out that you'd written a Hitman novel, and I think that was me finding out there was a Hitman novel.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, we better put that on the list.
Bill, did you have any contact or discussion with Eric Nyland, who wrote, yeah,
absolutely. No, I know Eric, or I haven't seen him in years. I used to see him all the time at science fiction conventions, but as you know, we haven't had any science fiction conventions in a while.
Sadly.
Right.
Yeah, sadly indeed. But no, and he was very much involved in part of the team there, and an important part of the team. And he, of course, wrote Halo, Reach, and which was a great book. Everybody loved that book, and it was the precursor for what I did.
Right.
And so yeah, he did a great job, and he'd be a great guy to talk to. He'd be able to give you a lot of that, inside stuff, about what it was like to be on the team and be writing, a novelization at the same time.
Yeah, as I was
a different book.
Yeah, because I was curious if he had to provide you, because I noticed you had a couple of tie-ins to events that happened in Fall of Reach around the character of Major Silva. So yeah, it was a neat little thread to follow.
Right.
Did they keep some sort of a Bible or something?
Good question. I'm trying to remember. I know they gave me materials. It's been 20 years. I know they gave me materials.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but not on the scale that Lucasfilms did when I wrote the novellas for Jedi Knight. Mean, box after box got shipped to my door. Art, got shipped.
Yeah.
Stuff that I have hanging on my wall, which is, I could probably sell it at a convention for a lot of money.
Probably.
That's
that was, and then they had a Bible so strict, and so complicated. I mean, it just covered every single book that had been done, all the movies, fit the whole thing together. It was intense.
And that sounds about right, because when I talked to David Fox, who was one of the earliest members of Lucasfilm Games and ran the studio briefly, he was talking about how at Skywalker Ranch they just have material and all of this material set aside, and even him, just as a force of habit. When I interviewed him several years ago, he said, "Oh yeah, I have photocopies of literally everything I ever did for Lucasfilm that he sent me."
Rolled. And the ranch, I got to go to the ranch, guys. That's
awesome.
That's too cool. Tell us about the ranch. Don't leave anything out.
And It was great. I went with my editor. She flew in from New York to San Francisco, and I came down from Seattle, and and so we rented a car and we drive out there, and she's navigating and she's saying, "So this place doesn't have a sign, Bill. There's no sign. There's no anything. All there is a black post office box, mailbox, and had, I forget, some numbers on it." And that's what we have to watch for. And sure enough, up comes this thing, and it looks like you're turning into a driveway, maybe to a trailer home or something like that. And you turn in, and the road gets bigger and everything. And then this house that Lucas built appears, and then the library next to it, and then the shed, the big buildings where all the computer stuff is going on.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Now, you were talking about the team before. How often, writing for hire, working with this team, how often would you say you were going in and meeting with them versus just, writing from home or something like that?
Yeah, not that often. There was the initial meetings, and then it was mostly just from home and on the phone and that kind of stuff. Zoom and stuff wasn't what it is today, obviously 20 years ago.
Sure.
So there wasn't as much of that kind of, video meeting or whatever. In fact, I'm not sure there were any back then. Once it was on track, and of course I had an editor who back in New York who was tracking what I was doing, and I think I was sharing, stuff as it came out, and he was sharing it with them. And so there was some real time editing and checking and feedback, and they're telling me, "Hey, back off on this, Bill," or "Hey, this works. You can keep that."
Right.
And so that was going on. But I have to say that I came to writing late. My first novel was published when I was 40, so I've never been a young man in science fiction.
You hear that, Kevin? I got 8 months. I got 8
You
months.
have 8 months, Phil.
And I'll be on the same schedule as Bill here.
Because, like I had promised myself when I was in my 20s that I would write a book, but I got to be 39. I hadn't started. And I sat down and wrote the book. I said, I got to keep that promise to myself. I'll write the book. It won't get published, but I'll write the book. So I wrote the book and I sent it in, and Ace bought it the first place I sent it, the first time I sent it.
Holy cow.
That's amazing.
And it wasn't because I was really, really, great, that I was some amazing author. A couple of years later, I was having lunch with my then editor at Ace Books, and by that time we knew each other, and so she felt she could say this to me. She said, I was recounting how wonderful it was when I sold that book, and she said, "Well, the thing about that book was, Bill, it wasn't that great a book, but we needed some of that shit right at that time."
Right place, right time. I'll take it. Take it, baby. I love it.
So, yeah, I get no respect, but
none.
Anyway.
Hey man, you're the one who decided you wanted to write sci-fi. We can't. That's just an ungrateful fan base.
But so anyway, we digress.
Oh, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Without breaking any NDAs or anything like that, was there anything that you wanted to put in the book that they just came down on hard and just went, no, absolutely not?
That's a good question. I don't remember them saying, no to any of my little segments, but
Sure.
I remember them giving guidance about aspects of those things that they liked and didn't like. I don't remember all the refinements of that, but I think the one thing that bugged me that I felt badly about, was the end of Halo the Flood. As you know, they blow the ring up. And they told me everybody that you create in these interstitial spaces, for lack of a better description, is going to have to die when the ring blows up. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Well, we're still holding out hope that like pulled a Boba Fett somehow and crawled out of the pit and
Maybe he did. You just never,
get some one shots.
You never know.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah,
That's
and that's something that we agreed with, was that it was because it was such a nice dramatic arc with all of these interstitial characters, and then it ends up that they kind of have to have a quick, like, their loose ends have to get tied up really quickly at the end as Master Chief is basically finishing everything up.
So it was a bargain that I had to agree to if I wanted to have that additional material, and I thought it was worth it. So
sure.
Well, in a way, it kind of frees you up, doesn't it? You know, because whatever choices you make, it all just kind of, the slate's wiped clean in the end. So
it's true, and of course, you know, to the extent that you do that, and this is something that probably people who read the novel and played the game probably didn't think about, but from a strategic aspect, a writing aspect, which you guys would understand, you know, in a story, if you kill off a few people that folks like, it really adds a certain amount of, you know, suspense and tension and all of that to the book, because they go, this crazy son of a gun will kill anybody off in this book. You know?
Sure.
I mean, you don't know what's coming, you know.
Ask George R.R. Martin. He's
Lord, oh Lord, yes.
I actually remember when R.A. Salvatore killed Chewbacca and what was it? Prime?
Oh, right. It was one of the later books, one of the new Jedi Order books. But yeah,
Vector Prime. Yeah,
he had a planet. He had a planet crush Chewbacca.
Yeah, the only way you could kill that furry son of a bitch, you had to crush him with a moon, man. Yeah, that was a turning point with certain geeks.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, none of us bought that, so.
So, what are any other difficulties of adapting a video game to a novel that you didn't run into with the other adaptations?
Well, sometimes, and I wrote one, you know, that I'm not going to get into because I don't want to name names here.
Sure, of course.
You know, all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes the companies, there'll be the person who's kind of the owner of the franchise, you know, the big boss or whatever, is exerting so much control that, you know, that they're basically telling you how to do everything, and they're not satisfied with anything they haven't done, and so on. And you know, that really can kill something. That's one possibility.
Right.
And you know, another one is where you sign on, and I'm thinking of a different book now. You sign on to do, you know, something, and they give you orders. And we were talking about kill off characters. They give you orders to kill somebody off and to accomplish certain things for their overarching plot. You do that, and all of their fans go crazy, you know, and spend
it was your idea.
Spend the next 6 months flaming you as a result.
Right.
So, you know, there are dangers, you know, definitely.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that one of the inherent challenges is the fan base.
Right.
Yeah. You got to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, absolutely. They can get really, really up in your grill without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the other challenges of writing when you're older is, and I've had this experience, I wrote 2 or 3 novels in the Resistance series that Sony had, the Resistance games, you know, and which I liked a lot. I love first-person shooters, and those were really good first-person shooters. I don't know why Sony hasn't brought those back via Steam or via, you know, Microsoft's new online, you know, service. I mean, those deserve to be preserved. But anyway, sometimes you get so involved and you become such an expert because you were hired to do these books that amazing things happen. I wound up co-writing a game for Sony based on a Resistance game,
That's
just
awesome.
because I'd read these books and I knew it so well, and I was always correcting people on the team and
Yeah.
going,
I knows
awesome.
better than you at that point.
Exactly.
but that isn't where I was going. Where I was going to go was, I remember that team, I went to meet with them off the top when I was first hired, and you walk into the room. And at that time, I think I was in my 60s, and everybody goes, you just see all these faces there. Everybody in there is under 30, and they're all going, who brought grandpa to the party? What in the world is going on here? And so you have to do a good job to overcome, the built-in.
Well, what are you playing now?
Right now, I'm playing Far Cry 5.
Oh, nice.
That's
I have a
Phil's favorite game.
Franchise. Yeah.
I for a long time, it's so crazy. For a long time, I love first-person shooters. And for a long time, I'd be in the game store, I'd be online, and I'd see like the cover art for Far Cry 2, and I thought, that looks sucky. I mean, it just didn't look that great to me. But finally, out of desperation, because there's only so many first-person shooters around, I gave it a try, and I fell in love with that game. Because it really allows you to use stealth,
Yep.
which I enjoy. I'm not a guy who loves to always just go in guns blazing, and
Sure.
I don't try to get through games, in half an hour, play the whole game through in half an hour, and set a record or something. I don't care about that. And so, not only did I play it, I played it like 3 times, and then I said, "You need to stop this, or and move on." So I thought, well, I'll try another Far Cry game, and so I tried 5, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's the Far Cry games have for me, I'm not the brightest soul when it comes to games, and they have a steep learning curve for me.
Mhm.
Like sometimes I'm going, what? How do you do this? What's the, I don't understand this point system or this thing or that thing, but eventually I figure it out about.
Yeah.
And
It's a learning curve, but they get you there eventually.
they get you there, and so I'm having a great time with it now. I got the learning curve behind me, so
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. We that was actually was that the third book we read?
The third
we read
book
the
we
Far
covered
Cry
was
Absolution.
Far Cry
It was a
Absolution,
novelization.
Oh,
which
cool.
is
Who
a
wrote
prequel.
that?
Yeah.
Urban Weight.
Oh, okay.
It was terrific. Very Cormac McCarthy. Really liked it.
It's a prequel to Far Cry 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't played that game. What enabled me to play 5 is that I got a new computer. My old computer couldn't do anything past 2. Just didn't have enough processing power, enough speed, memory and all that. So
beyond gaming influences, that sort of thing, who are your authors? Who are your guys who influenced you the most?
Well, I'd break them into 2 sets. I was a huge Heinlein fan as a kid, and Asimov, and just all the greats, Dick, on and on. I would say, since I'm a military science fiction writer, I was a huge Dave Drake fan. And Dave and I got invited at one point to co-write a book with Dave, which was a big thrill.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He was just such a generous man. And I was in the service during Vietnam, but I didn't go. He was in the service Vietnam, and he went. He was a tanker. And, if you know anything about the war in Vietnam, you guys are too young, but they had this Highway 101 or whatever it was that ran through the middle of, Vietnam. And the tanks couldn't really go anywhere except up and down this highway.
Right.
And, so that's where they spent a huge amount. That's where Dave spent a huge amount of his time and so on, is going up and down that highway, I believe. But so I like that kind of book. I like Campbell. I like, a lot of the people who work for Bain, because they're all military science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I should be able to think of more names right now, but
Yeah, well, it's
not blank.
It's a good lineup. It's a very good lineup.
Yeah.
All right. Are you working on anything right now? Anything in particular?
Oh yeah. I'm writing a series. I'm on book 7 of a series called Winds of War. And it's really interesting these days the way the business breaks down into these very specialized subcategories. So this is called, Amazon came up with this. This is called near future or near future alternative fiction. So, and they also put it up on the science fiction thing where it doesn't do that well. But in the alternative fiction category, these books are doing very well. And what makes them a little bit different is they're about a fictional, thank God, fictional World War III. But instead of the usual thing of following some individual hero or heroine, who goes Tom Clancy style. Remember how, his hero was just a CIA guy, and then he got promoted, and then he winds up as president. And you're going, what? What?
It's a jump.
Hey, what the hell happened there? I could never get over that. It just kind of boggled my mind.
Well, they took that idea for a TV show later with what was it, the Kiefer Sutherland. There's a show called Designated
24?
Designated Survivor with Kiefer Sutherland. Used the same idea as that Tom Clancy novel where what's his face, Harrison Ford's character, Jack Ryan becomes president.
Well, so I didn't want to do that. But I wanted to write in the very near future, but just a little bit over the hill, so to speak, just a little bit over the horizon. And so each book is about somebody different, and each book is set in a different place. And often I change between all the different military groups. One will be about the Navy, one will be about the Air Force, one will be about, the Army, and so on, with different characters. And a lot of people seem to like that. It's doing pretty well.
With a series that big, you're on the 7th book now. How much pre-planning do you do before you even get started?
Well, as you guys know, having, having gone to graduate school, and also I can tell, you do your own writing and stuff. There's really two kinds of writers: those who write outlines and those who don't. And you're an organic.
Seat of the Pants writers. Who are they? I don't know anything about them.
So you're an organic writer, right, Phil? I mean, that's your deal.
Absolutely.
And I get that, and it works for some people. But I'm so insecure. I don't want to just dive in there, not being able to know where I'm going, or whatever. If the muse doesn't show up for work, what the hell do I do? So, so I write an outline, but now I'm going to cop out a bit. I write the outline, but it's fairly high level. So that means that day to day, I'm often writing in an organic fashion. I'll come back to the outline maybe every 5 or 6 days, look at it, see if I'm on track, also look ahead to see what I'm doing. But it gives me that sense of I can get this done. I can get there because I know what the big stepping stones towards the end of the book are.
It's just guideposts. It's got guardrails for you to follow, basically.
But, as I think Phil would probably testify, the thing about the organic writing is that that's when the magic can happen. You haven't planned it. It just, something really good happens and you go with it and you feel it. And it comes from wherever it comes from. I don't feel it comes from me. That's why I talk about a muse. It's like it comes somewhere.
It's definitely the most feast and famine style of writing. You are either like on this roll where you're like, oh, I'm a genius, this is the greatest thing I've ever written, or you're just sitting there staring at a blinking cursor going, oh, I'm terrible, this is the worst. So I do think about that. I want to be an outline writer. I really do. I think that would be so much easier. if I was like, okay, here's A and B, and my job is to get from there to there, that's so much easier. And I just never bring myself to do it. I just can't do it. It's just jumbled notes hidden in various corners of a notebook. Like that's just, it's madness.
Only real men can be organic writers. I mean, the rest of us are kind of just wussies who go, no, I need railings, I need rails and crutches. And everything else.
I appreciate it.
Phil, do you think
pleased.
Bukowski had an outline? No. He had a whiskey bottle.
I think he had a lot less than that. Yeah.
But anyway, it is a pleasure. I just can't tell you how much I enjoy writing. I still pop out of bed in the morning and ready to go, and I love doing it. And
that's fantastic.
Privilege.
And I mean, and that's been your life for the past 35 years, something like that.
Yeah, well, I had a real job, being a manager for a big corporation and everything, and I put in my 20 years to get a defined pension. And then I became a full-time writer. So I've only been a full-time writer for about 20 years. Before that, I wrote a book a year while having a full-time job and being a dad and all of that. And it can be done. I've written articles about how to do it.
That's a smart way to do it.
1 page a day, Phil.
1 page a day.
1 page a day.
365 days and you have a book.
Yeah, that's true.
That is a full book right there.
1 page a day. That's all you have to do.
I might actually have to take that challenge. Do it that way. Do it 1 page a day.
I believe in you, Phil.
Really
yeah, I mean, and you can do it. If you've got a day job, you can do it at the boring staff meeting.
Right.
You can do it on the train. You can do it. Whatever.
Now that we're working remotely for work, I mean it makes it a lot easier.
Better. Yeah, because you can carve out some time to do that. So no excuses, guys.
There really is none. And yet,
here we are.
This is where you could throw it back at me and say, "But what were you doing up till age 39, Bill?" And I would have to say, writing television news, writing corporate stuff, but not writing fiction.
Writing other people's stuff.
Writing other people's stuff, yeah.
True.
You have had a very varied background based on what I've seen. I mean, that's got to play into your abilities as a writer. Yeah, just so many things to draw from.
It certainly helps. I remember when I went to grad school, which I didn't finish, but I got halfway through before my wife and I ran off to Africa. But,
halfway through is really all you need.
Halfway through is good enough, if you ask me.
But I remember this guy that I always sat next to. He was kind of a young, studly kind of guy. And we would talk and he told me, and I would say, so what are you going to do after you finish your master's? And he said, well, I'm going to become a tuna fisherman. And I said, what? Why? He says, because it'll look good when I write a book. It'll look good on the blurb.
That's
people love that sexy background.
So
tuna fisherman turned novelist.
He was just going to do it for that reason. That just kind of, but anyway,
I can't argue with too much of that motivation. No. I get it. I absolutely
not at all.
Get it. Let me see. Well, Kevin, you got anything?
You guys are podcasters now, and that's very hip, very happening.
Yeah,
so that goes right on the book cover. So
true. This is not a topic that is heavily covered either. So
but that's the thing, though. And that is, I mean, we live in a time of mass customization. We live in a time, making this up, where there's a magazine for left-handed bike riders,
Yeah, right.
And, it's those micro audiences. And basically, since I started self-publishing on Amazon, that's what I'm finding really works well.
Yeah.
Is, you're not getting the mass market, but you're getting a large mini market.
Yeah.
People who really like that particular type of thing and like what you're doing and are willing to, keep paying for it. So
that's what I remember. My producing professor, I believe it was Professor Meyer, once saying in a class, "You need about 10,000 dedicated fans, and you have a career."
the man had it right. You know,
Mhm.
yeah. I can tell that some of your professors were better than mine.
we had a very unique grad school career. It was that was a good time.
Yeah,
It was a good time. What I remember of it was pretty good.
I went to a communications school where very few of my professors had ever done any communicating. You know, they'd never worked in radio or television or anything. They were all theory oriented, and that wasn't what I was looking for at the time.
All of our professors were literal Hollywood burnouts, as if
it had serious, like, they were ex-pros
that just just didn't want to do it. They were just so tired. Right. They were so tired.
So you'd get some really practical advice, but maybe sometimes the teaching abilities weren't quite as
right. Yeah, no, I know what you mean there. Definitely.
When you're 25 years old and you come in and realize the professor is every bit as hungover as you are, and you're like, okay, this is grad school. All right.
At the time when I was going to grad school, I was also working full time as a TV director at a local television station, directing 2 evening news shows a day. And so when I became a teaching assistant and they hired me to teach television production, my class could actually go to the studio, crowd into the booth, and watch me get through a live show. Now that's when you actually, can lay claim to having taught something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
It's right there. You're doing it right in front of you.
That's as practical as it gets.
Oh, what? Now you did mention, to be fair, that Resistance was kind of your baby in the sense, like a franchise you really enjoyed. Were there any others that you've worked on that if they called you up tomorrow to work on something for them, you'd say yes without any hesitation?
Well, of course, this boat has sailed, but I still love Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I would certainly have to, listen to their story and so on, but that's not going to happen. Sadly, the number of tie-in books has dwindled a great deal. I mean, there was work there for quite a few people, and now it seems like it just has kind of vanished for whatever reason.
Sure.
But that's certainly one. I might, entertain Hitman if that came up. That was kind of fun to write. It was so different. Mm-hmm. Different team. It was a European team. And it just had that caused things to be different in the way that what they would accept and what they wouldn't. I'll give you an example. So I give the Hitman, a Beamer to drive, and it's a real fancy Beamer and everything. And I thought, this is cool. I mean, it's the kind of thing a guy like him would drive, right? I mean, and nope. I get this, email coming back, bag the Beamer. It's a Volvo.
Oh.
Because these guys are over there in Volvo land,
Yeah. So I just looked it up.
I had to school myself on Volvos and find out, if there was a sexy one.
Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you very much, Bill. It was terrific meeting you.
It's a pleasure meeting you too. Maybe we'll bump into each other down the line sometime.
I hope so.
I'd like that.
All right. Take care.
Once again, we want to thank Bill for coming on the show. If you want more information about his work, please check out his website, williamcdietz.com, or his Twitter @WCDietz. Links to those will be in the description below. Thanks for listening to PixelLit. Good night, everyone.